Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining our virtual cruise festival, and in particular thank you for joining our Swan Hellenic presentation. I'm Amy from Select Travel Holidays, home of Cruise Select, and this presentation is something I'm personally very excited about, and I'm sure a lot of our clients are as well. Swan Hellenic was a beloved cruise line, legendary almost, practically a British institution in the world of small ship cruising. And it really left a void in 2017 when Swan sadly collapsed, particularly given how unique Swans was in its vision of seeing the world from a different point of view, with small ship cruising country house style. To some really unusual destinations, or seeing popular destinations in a tailor-made programme of escorted shore excursions, which really honed in on the history and culture of both ancient and modern civilizations. They said that Swan Hellenic was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but we found that the comfort, the convivial atmosphere and friendships made on board with like-minded guests and the attentive crew, as well as the inspiring itineraries and excursions, meant that many of our clients returned to Swan Hellenic and Minerva time and time again. So earlier this year it was announced that Swan Hellenic was being revived and a new Minerva would sail the seas. I think we could all agree that this year we've needed good news more than ever, so that certainly ticked that box, and I always get excited whenever there's new cruise ships, so that's why I am particularly excited about this presentation, and I hope that many of our clients will be as well. I know they were certainly thrilled to hear the news about the revival of Swan Hellenic. So in his presentation today, Swan Hellenic's General Manager John Warner is going to explain to us how the new Swan Hellenic aims to pay homage to the original in their aim to be the leader in cultural expedition cruising, whilst also delivering it with the most up-to-date modern style and technology. So in a way it could also bring Swan Hellenic to newer generations. And then afterwards join us for a Q&A session where I ask him some further questions, including some of yours. Enjoy.
Hello, my name is John Warner and I am the General Manager of Swan Hellenic, and today I want to run through a brief presentation and hopefully provide an overview of who Swan Hellenic are, where we go to, our ships, and what someone should expect on one of our 5-star cultural discovery expedition cruises. The name of Swan Hellenic may well be familiar to a number of you, and its origins as a pioneering cultural discovery cruise company actually date back as far as the 1950s, and the ethos of the brand has always been to visit smaller off the beaten track destinations, and once in those destinations to offer a ShoreX program that allowed the guests to get to the very heart of the destination, and then when back on board to enjoy the most amazing lecture program delivered by experts and guest speakers. And we felt that those brand attributes were as relevant for today's modern traveller as they were to the traveller of 70 years ago. So we decided to acquire the brand and then relaunch it by paying homage to those brand attributes, and also emphasizing the British heritage of the brand, but perhaps also providing our own new modern elements, predominantly on the hardware front, and also from a service commitment, of which I'll talk about a little bit further on. Perhaps the most noticeable difference between Swan Hellenic of old and the Swan Hellenic of tomorrow is the hardware or the ships. So we are an owner-operator. We actually own the Helsinki shipyard, and we are building 2 PC5 expedition ships specifically for Swan Hellenic, the brand. They're in construction right now. You're seeing on the slide the first, which is the Minerva, which was also the name of the last Swan Hellenic ship, so we wanted to keep that link with the past. The ships are much smaller than previous Swan Hellenic ships. The specification for these first 2 sister ships is a guest capacity of 152. Allied to that, we have a staff number of 120. So you can see that with 120 staff and 152 guests, we have an extremely high staff to guest ratio, which allows us to make sure that we can provide personal service and cater to all of the needs of our guests. The other thing I think that, and I mentioned it a little bit before and didn't explain it, I called them a PC5 ship. So what is a PC5 ship? Well, it's really talking about the strengthening of the hull. And what does it mean? It means that the ship is able to go into waters that other ships not built to that high hull strength and specification simply aren't able to go to. So that's part of our mantra. We're going to try and take people to see what others don't, because we have a ship that's small enough and sturdy enough to go to places that other vessels can't go. So I mentioned 2 sister ships, and about 10 days ago we announced the 3rd ship is also on order. So we'll have the very first Minerva ship will be with us in London November 21. Sister ship will be in London in April 22, and the 3rd ship will be either tail end of 22 or right at the start of 23. So what is the idea behind, or what are we trying to achieve at Swan Hellenic? It's pretty simple really what the vision is. We're trying to be the world leader in cultural expedition cruising. We've assembled a team of very senior veterans of high-end luxury and expedition cruising, and we've distilled all of that experience, and we're going to ally it to the fabulous ships in a bid to deliver groundbreaking, unique experiences for everyone who travels on Swan Hellenic. So the obvious question is, well, you've got these fabulous ships, but where do they go? So I'm going to sort of kind of divide the world up into 3, if I may. And the first area I want to talk about is the Arctic. So we are definitely going to have, with these first 2 ships, a focus on the polar regions, and we're really going to focus on the Arctic. Now, traditionally, expedition companies have focused on Western European Arctic, normally the access point being Svalbard. Now, we're certainly going to be coming up through Iceland, Greenland, and across to Svalbard, but we're also going to go further. We're also going to go into Far East Russian Arctic, and as you can see from this itinerary, which really focuses and ends up in a place called Dudinka, we're actually going to go through some of the most unvisited places on the planet in Russia. And the reason is very simple, that we think that these lesser visited places are equally as impressive as some of the more well-known places. If you look at Wrangel Island in the middle of the right-hand side of that presentation slide, Wrangel Island is generally acknowledged as having the highest level or highest density of polar bears during the Arctic summer, yet has only a modicum of the amount of people that go to the Arctic. So it remains almost unknown except to a very few set of people. We hope to change that. So we're going to have both ships coming into the Arctic, one approaching from one side and one approaching from the other. Both ships will also have a full Antarctic season. And I guess the differences between the two ships can probably be described in how they're getting to the Antarctic. One that's going to come from the Russian Far East will come down through Asia, across the Pacific, through to New Zealand, around New Zealand, and then back. And the other will go Greenland, high Arctic Canada, then down through the Americas and all the way down to Ushuaia. Now, often I think with expedition cruise organisations, people tend to focus just on the Arctic or the Antarctic. Extremely important bucket list trips for everyone, but we actually believe everywhere in between is equally as important. And if you look at the itinerary I've got on the screen, which is Iceland, which is probably very well known to a lot of people from a British perspective because it's one of our neighbours, but actually the opportunity to see Iceland from the perspective of a small ship sailing around it is vastly different from seeing it behind the steering wheel of your SUV. And as I said, we'll have one coming down, if you like, east and one coming down west. The trip down through parts of Asia is an example of going to places like Papua New Guinea and parts of Indonesia that realistically no one has really been to before, and we can go there because our ship is only 152 passengers and 115 meters long, so very, very small. Again, it's all about trying to take people to see what. So what can a guest expect on a Swan Hellenic ship? I think I'll talk about a couple of items rather than go through everything. So one is a fantastic onboard program. As you can imagine, we will have a full program of guest speakers, lecturers and experts. Our travellers are well-travelled people, well-educated, and will have a thirst for knowledge and a desire for personal enrichment. So we will need to have a world-class program of engaging and stimulating talks on a wide range of subjects that are relevant to each itinerary and every part of the world we visit. Food. I don't think I've ever met any type of traveller who has not thought that food is a very important part of their holiday and their travel experience, and we plan to devote a lot of care and attention and thought into the food that we provide on our ships. There will be 2 restaurants, the Swan restaurant, which has the ability to cater to all 152 passengers in the one sitting and is set up as a formal dining area. The second place is the Club Lounge, which is far more informal and home to interactive food counters and a range of dining options such as, freshly made pizza from the pizza oven and locally sourced ingredients providing tapas style sharing plates. The third option for food is if you want some privacy and would rather retire to your own cabin and eat there, we have 24-hour in-room dining service. The other thing that we're super excited about and is our photography lab. Now, I don't think it matters whether you're a box brownie veteran or an iPhone whiz kid. When it comes to taking photographs, I think we've all been in that situation where we come back from a trip and show somebody a photograph and say, and here was amazing, and then add the caveat, but this photo doesn't do it justice. Well, this photo laboratory is all about making sure that the photographs and the memories that our travellers experience are captured perfectly on camera. So we will have a team on board of expert photographers who will mentor, help, assist, train and make sure that all our guests get the very most out of every moment and make sure that they capture it on film. So those are some of the things that we've got on ship, but I think also one of the things that's most important is one of the things that isn't there. And what I mean by that is that the ship actually could have been designed to have about 20 more cabins, but we made the decision not to have those cabins, preferring to offer to our clients one of the highest guest to space ratio on any ship on the sea. And the idea behind that is to try to provide space, one, but certainly the ability to have unrivaled sight lines and the anywhere on ship. And the idea is that we don't want a guest to ever experience or be anywhere on the ship where they don't have the opportunity to get a really good view of the scenery that's passing them by. The ship has been designed by Tillberg Design of Sweden, one of the most celebrated marine design companies in the world, and the remit was to create a Scandi chic, elegant, sophisticated look that was both gorgeous but at the same time refined, and I think they've done that. And if I move you through some of the different renderings, as you can see, this is the Swan restaurant. So as you can see, that concept of clear sight lines and good visibility is illustrated here. If we move into the observation lounge, you can see exactly the same, floor to ceiling, very neutral Scandinavian wood and lovely tones, all part of this Scandi chic. But my favourite photo and what I want to show you was the sauna. So you can have had a hard expedition day, and then you come across, have a sauna, and of course you can look straight out, and if that's not enough, you can hop outside into the hot tubs and be very much at one with nature. So that was all about life on board. And what about life off the ship? Well, prior to that, now I do want to talk about one room which is very, very important, I think, on an expedition ship. Historically, these rooms are called mud rooms, and what are they? They're where you change into and out of your expedition gear. And so we wanted to take that to a different level. So if you look at the picture top left-hand corner, you will see our attempt at redefining the mudroom or the changing room, and we're calling it base camp, and we will have a concierge managed mudroom slash changing room. What will happen is you will arrive, either take off or put on your equipment, and vice versa, and the preparation, presentation and maintenance of that equipment will all be done for you in base camp. Once you're off the ship, then it's all about the authentic, life-changing experience. The majority of our landings, particularly in the polar areas, will be with Zodiac. And I want to make a point here that a lot of people are put off the idea of travelling on an expedition ship due to the usage of soft hold Zodiacs. So for any traveller that is concerned about their mobility, we will have hard hold Zodiacs so that everybody has the opportunity to get off the ship and enjoy the sights. The idea is that no one should be left on board. It's about everyone having the opportunity to enjoy the cruise on an equal footing, if you'll excuse the expression. As I said, we've got space for 152 guests, and we have 4 types of cabins. We have 16 ocean view rooms at a space of 19 meters squared. Then we have 54 balcony rooms, which are 28 meters squared. Then we have 6 suites, 2 of which are premium suites, and their size are 44 square meters and 49 square meters Okay, so I hope that's given everybody a very quick overview of who Swan Hellenic are and what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. In summary, I'd like to say that the brand has been around for over 70 years. We have hundreds of years of expedition experience amongst the senior leadership team. We have brand new vessels. We're an owner operated. We've designed what we think is best in class. We think our ships will be beautiful, elegant, refined, but most importantly, they're small. And with their PC5 hull, are able to go to places that other larger cruise ships simply cannot. We have 120 staff on board, and their only remit is to make sure that our customers are catered to and are happy. And finally, we have what we think are best in-class itineraries that cover all 7 continents and really give anybody who's interested in enriching cultural expedition cruising, hopefully, the opportunity to have a trip of a lifetime. So thanks to everybody for their time. My name is John Warner. If anyone's got any questions at all, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We'd be happy to help, and we look forward to welcoming you on board.
Okay, so thank you for joining us at our virtual cruise festival. I'm Amy from Select Travel Holidays, home of Cruise Select, and I'm here with John Warner from Swan Hellenic. So John, thanks for your time and thanks for your presentation. It's really exciting that Swan Hellenic's being revived because, as you mentioned, it is a very long established brand that dates back to the 50s, and as cruise specialists for over 20 years, we've had a lot of clients who love Swan Hellenic, and they were obviously really heartbroken. And in 17, when it went, and it really left such a big gap in the market. And I'm sure a lot will be really interested to hear watch this presentation and hear more about the revival. And I know I emailed some of our clients and had some really lovely comments back, actually. So if you don't mind, before I start with some of the questions, I'll start with some of what they said. So Jenny said, now that is welcome news, and I'm sure I won't be the only old swan who is pleased to hear it. Yes, there are still the odd 1 or 2 of us still alive. So hopefully they'll be able to join your cruises. Olive said, many thanks indeed for the most welcome news. I derided subtly those of little faith. Bring it on, as they say nowadays. Countless times when viewing TV programmes, etc. I say aloud, thank you, Swans and Mr. Swan AL, for having facilitated travelling to so many interesting destinations before they became busy, commercialised and or dangerous. For example, the Petra flash floods and the Yemen. So it was like, there's a strong following there. A lot of our clients that are really excited, and one of them, Jill, actually back in the 70s, was working with Ian Rate Tourism and Leisure, a PR company, and Ken Swan was one of her favourite clients. So yeah, we've got some clients who are really interested, and hopefully they've enjoyed your presentation so far, and they'll be interested.
What I was going to say is that since we made the announcement, we were bringing the brand back. Both from former travellers, certainly people who worked for Swan Hellenic over the years, they've all got in touch. And what I would sum up the feeling is great affection for the brand, but particularly what the brand stood for over the years. And we're trying to pay homage to that and to make sure that we offer the itineraries, the Shorex, the lecture program that would have fitted in with what Ken Swan was trying to do. So that's our aim, and it's been very nice, particularly I think in an extraordinarily difficult time for a lot of people, for people to stop and take the time to reach out to me and the rest of the team. We've been we've really appreciated the support that we've had, particularly from former customers, but also from the industry. It's been nothing short of wonderful. So we're very appreciative. So for all the people that wrote in and had questions, thanks very much. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Excellent, thank you. So there's just some
lorry or something reversing nearby. It's the problem with this new normal, isn't it?
The joys of being at home. Yes.
Yeah, and I've had to open the windows because I was getting hot. So
No problem.
we'll just give it like a few seconds, hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
See if I can edit that bit out, or we'll keep it in. Okay, so
You can hear the reversing sound, can't you?
yeah. Well, I've had drilling earlier for one of the neighbours, I think. So typical, just as you're about to start this sort of thing. But you know, okay, so it's got a bit quieter now. So I'll start with some of the questions. And so we've already talked a little bit about paying homage to the original Swan Hellenic, and the original Swan Hellenic prided itself on what it called as country house style, and you've obviously departed from that a little to modernise it with, I think you called it refined Scandi chic. However, they also boasted a convivial onboard atmosphere, which I'm sure a lot of our clients would really look back on fondly, particularly with like-minded passengers and open seating dining. Is this something you're looking, I presume, is something you'd be looking to foster in some way? For example, I noted that the dining in the Swans restaurants seem to be more groups of 4 rather than tables for 2. So would there be options for couples to sit by themselves if they preferred, or is one sitting for dinner presumably open seating? And I suppose like you're still trying to make sure that like-minded passengers are attracted to the itineraries, etc.
Yeah, I think it's all a lot of questions there. I'll try and answer them as best I can. No, that's absolutely fine. So I think the first thing to note was we wanted to have a small ship. And we wanted to have, so our ships are 152 passengers at a maximum. So if you think that you've got a very small ship in terms of size, you've got people that have chosen to travel to a destination which makes them like-minded, plus they want to enjoy the offshore and the onboard program. So we're hoping that that creates a group that is very collegiate, and wants to spend time together. The idea of the Swan restaurant is to sit everybody in the one sitting. At the moment, it's 4 groups of 4, and part of that was, and it's open seating, so part of that was to encourage that. Now, we have other areas where you can, if you want to be by yourself, of course, you can stay in, have in-room dining, but we think that everyone is going to experience the off the ashore part, come back on board and then want to talk about it. And one of the things we feel that will really help with that is we've got this photography lab, and we're going to try and get everybody to get perfect pictures. And we think just the simple act of having everybody having all of their photographs looked at and shared and so forth will be very collegiate and very open. So yes, we're definitely trying to foster a very close onboard atmosphere, but at the same time we have a ship that's got so much space, and the guest to space ratio is kind of colossal actually on board, that if you want to have some quiet time or some private time, the ship can cater for that. So hopefully we've got the full gamut, but you know, ostensibly I think when you go to some of these far-flung places and spend 7, 10, 12, 14 days, we're hoping that people forge very close personal relationships and come back time and time again and say, well, I'm traveling with our usual Swan Hellenic partners, and then maybe in time, and I think that was something that happened in the past, and we'd love that to happen in the future.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And you've got some fantastic looking itineraries, and you're going to some off the beaten track destinations which are ideal for expedition. The original Swans, as we already discussed, were also destination pioneers, I guess you could call them, and really went to some out there places, often continuing to operate in areas, as Olive said, that other cruise lines perhaps shied away from or moved away from. Their Middle East, Red Sea and Black Sea itineraries were particularly popular. Are those areas that you might explore again after the first couple of seasons, particularly when you've got a fleet of 3? Because obviously you'll have more ships in your fleet than the original Swans did. So I guess that gives you more options.
Yes, we've got 2 ships that the first 2 sister ships are heavily polar based. We have a 3rd ship which is going to be slightly larger in size, which is going to come, don't quote me on this, but end of 2020, start of 2023. And that's going to be more focused on warm water,
Okay.
as opposed to some of the harsher. Now, our aim or long-term plan is to try to be the leader in cultural discovery expedition cruising. And in order to attain such a position, we need to have a worldwide offering, and we need to visit some of the places that Swan Hellenic was extremely well known for. We certainly would love to do that. We certainly would hope to take some of the spirit of some of those really. I spoke to Lizzie, who is the daughter of Ken Swan, and she told me that her father was really, really passionate about the business, and after Sunday lunch he would clear the table, put down a map, and all the kids would go around and he would start plotting. Those sort, you can't beat that sort of passion. We want to bring that level of passion and interest, and taking people to places that they've read about maybe but never even thought they could.
Yeah.
And because we've got such a small ship, we'll be able to do that, and hopefully we can show some people things that our line is to see what others don't. That's a big claim to make, so we have to make sure that we live up to it. But yes, I think it's fair to say that we will be releasing itineraries for the third ship, which will start to round out a more warm water, and perhaps go to some of the places that Swan was perhaps better known for. Yes.
Excellent. So I know you did a slide about what's included, and it included I think a pre-night hotel and transfers, etc. But will flights be included, or something that we can book for our clients with you, given that some of your destinations are very remote? I was looking, that Arctic Discovery itinerary, which goes to the Yenisei. I think Didinka was the debarkation place. I was just thinking, from a practical point of view, would flights be able to be arranged? Because that's probably not the easiest place to get to.
Yeah, so we have, let's call it it's cruise only, although as you rightly state, every single itinerary we're having a pre-night departure and transfers to and from, which I think I explained. We don't want anyone to miss the ship because of an airline. But if we have the ability to offer flights to all destinations if required, if people want to have stop-offs, if people are wishing to all of that can be accommodated. So I know a lot of people these days book things on with air miles and all sorts of stuff, and that's fine. So we have that cruise only price. And if somebody wants us to have flights or a series of different flights, a much more complicated itinerary, we can do that as well. Our idea is to be as flexible and to offer whatever the customer requires. So if somebody's got a particular need, sure, we can provide that. If somebody has a much less or more straightforward, just wants a cruise only, that's also fine.
Obviously that's something that we'd always sort of package up for you anyway. That's what our clients wanted. But, so are you able to give us an idea of what sort of immersive cultural experiences guests could expect? Will there be a choice of excursions included for ports of call?
So I think divided a little bit. So I think when we're in polar climes, it's more of a one type of offshore experience for everybody, a landing, and it's not a great deal of opportunity to offer or differentiate, and I think everyone appreciates that and knows where they're going to. But for some of the other destinations, there'll definitely be a choice of excursion. I'm slightly hampered in being able to answer that question, because there's lots of things that we are discussing that I'd love to talk about, but it's all under wraps, and primarily because we're still in the process of putting that together. We know that we need, as Swan Hellenic, to produce a ShoreX program of extraordinary, authentic and unforgettable excursions that needs to be world class. And we're super excited about some of the things that we've come up with, which I think are going to be things that you just, if you are fortunate enough to be on one of our itineraries and do some of the trips that people, some of the experiences that people are talking about, I think those are the things you're going to come back and tell people about. So very excited. I would say if you can hold fire and give us just a few months to put that together. But when we have details, as soon as we get them, we'll share them.
Excellent. Well, that'll be something I'll be looking forward to sharing with our clients. I suppose you're starting really in the polar region anyway, so I guess you've got a bit more time to sort of fine tune some of the.
You're absolutely right, Amy. It was one of the reasons why we didn't have it to go, because we had the first sort of 3 and a bit months, if you like, of being down in the poles where we don't need a SureX program. So it's more a question of logistics. Of course, everybody now has started asking, and we're feeling that perhaps we should have been a little bit quicker. But you know, in the end, I think people understand. And as soon as we have details, which is pretty short in time in terms of our delivery, we'll let people know. Yeah,
I mean, I guess it's best to get it right. And actually, just a quick question about so obviously you're with the polar, it'd be zodiac landings, and you mentioned that yours are hard hulled, and that's meant to make it more accessible. So could you just explain for our viewers who perhaps don't know the difference between a soft and hard hulled zodiac, please?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important point, actually. So traditionally, expedition vessels have had soft hulled zodiacs. So think of a, for want of a better description, a rubber-based dinghy. And you know, getting into it from a landing point with a sea and has not necessarily been is more akin for people who are very mobile. And if you have queries or mobility isn't something that you're super confident about, then that was problematic. And so we know that people were, well, I'd love to go. It's a bucket list itinerary. With that bit, if I can't get off the ship, then it's no point. So we understand that. So what we've got is some hard hulled zodiacs, and it literally as in the name, so they're sturdy. And the idea behind these, and even for people that have perhaps quite limited mobility and wouldn't want to be able to do a wet water landing onto, we will take people in the hard hold so that they can see the scenery. And the hope is that we can give and offer people a safe and stable platform for them to get off the ship, even in poor weather conditions, so they are not stuck with their nose pressed against the window watching their fellow travellers go and experience anything. And we wanted to make sure that we had that option so that people would be able to say, well, actually, I can cruise with confidence because I believe that I'm going to be able to experience what my other passengers. There's nothing worse than if you sit down for dinner and someone says, how was your day? And someone said, well, I couldn't get off. I mean, that would just be something that we're desperately trying to avoid. So if anyone's got any queries about that sort of area, hopefully this is a solution to something that may have stopped them being able to travel before. And so that means, great, come on, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be like, oh, I saw the penguins through the binoculars on deck, do you? Just get a bit closer.
Yes. You see that small thing in the distance? Yes. That we're trying to avoid that. We want to get people up close and personal.
Yeah, okay, thanks. We also have a lot of solo travellers, including Liz, who has asked about activities for solo passengers aboard. Do you actually have any solo occupancy cabins, or would there be any sort of, are you thinking of perhaps, because I know sometimes some cruise lines occasionally do special offers for solos. Is that something you'd be looking to do?
So as it stands at the moment, all of the cabins can be booked by solo travellers. If a solo traveller books a cabin, they do need to be aware of that there will be a price point that is more than just dividing that cabin in half. We are slightly hampered in one sense because we've gone small. We only have a small section of cabins. I know there are some cruise lines with massive ships that are able to allocate designated solo cabins. We simply are not in that position to do so. We realise that does increase the cost for solo travellers. We would still very much like to have to think that anyone could travel with Swan Hellenic, but we are aware of the fact that it may, for some people, prove to be an obstacle.
Okay, but suppose like you said before, if a solo traveller is still okay to, I guess you've got that collegiate feeling you're talking about, you've got that the open dining, the sort of photography lab, so I guess if you've already got, if they're happy to pay the money to get on board, there will be activities in place, perhaps not like a designated solo thing, but just the nature of what goes on board, and your ex would.
Yeah, I think what you described there is absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think anybody that travels on their own, by the time they leave, we'd like to say that they'd have 272 close friends, and the extra 100, or sorry, I should say 271. My maths is appalling. And we'd like to say the extra 120 is the staff. Now, we will have a list of all the people that are traveling on board, and we're going to make sure that anybody that's traveling on their own is very well catered for and looked after. Our service delivery is going to be very personal. It's going to be, we're going to call it unobtrusive. You know, I think certain people would like nothing more than to just be left alone. Fine, that's not a problem. And then we've got other people who would like to know everything about the ship and how does this work and how does that work. That's absolutely fine, and everything in between. And I think for solo travelers, we'll make sure that they're included, that we were offering them a very collegiate and personal service that makes them feel that you may be on the other side of the world and you may not necessarily be traveling with your nearest and dearest, but we're the family, and so you're traveling with us, and we'll make sure that you're looked after. And like you said, Amy, I think that the very nature of expedition cruising is to throw everyone in to the same experiences, and to then come back, discuss it, learn about it, and then discuss it some more, and then go to bed hopefully happily exhausted after a very fulfilling day, and then wake up in the morning and off you go again, and you're sat by somebody different this time, but you're experiencing a thrilling day. And then you talk to them, and you sit down for dinner, and I'm talking to Amy now, and then I was talking to John, and after 10 days, hopefully you don't feel like you're traveling on your own. You feel like you're traveling with part of the Swan Hellenic family on trip X.
Excellent, thank you. So with your brand new custom built ships, you've mentioned that you'll be building a PC5 hull, which you explained about, and obviously you're making use of the most up-to-date technology for comfortable and accessible sailing. I mean, particularly, some of the areas you'll be cruising in, I should imagine you'll be doing perhaps the Drake Passage, or sometimes known as, the Drake Shakes or the Drake Lakes. Some of the areas you'll be would probably make good use of that up-to-date technology. Will you also be utilising technologies or implementing measures on board for more sustainable sailing too, particularly given some of the destinations such as polar regions you'll be sailing to? Obviously, you want to make sure that you're as green as possible to protect those environments.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely is the answer to that question. And I think it even starts not necessarily just with the use of technology, although I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Traditionally and actually I've been looking at the archives a little bit of Swan Hellenic, and the amount of paper that they produced with itineraries and was colossal. Will be the modern version of Swan Hellenic will be paperless on board. We will do our very, very hardest to be no single-use plastic. That's something that we think that we can, eradicate, or at least get it to a point where we feel comfortable. All of our staff will be trained, and all of we'll instruct all passengers to how, when you leave the ship, to leave no footprint. All of that training is in place, and then obviously you've got the ability now, and some of the things that the tech in the hardware of ships these days is extraordinary. So I'm going to get this slightly incorrect, so this is layman terms, but the air filtration units that we're having on board, for example, are cutting edge, and they're all designed about the inability, to stop the ability of the spread of anything through airborne passageways. We have the latest and greatest on that. So tick that off. But there's some other cool stuff, like we have this dynamic positioning, which allows us to stay where we want to stay, and we don't have to drop anchor. Now, it may seem like a small thing, and people may think about it, but you drop an anchor on coral, you damage coral. If we don't have to drop an anchor, there's no damage to the environment. But I think possibly the thing that's uppermost in everybody's mind is the ability to not burn fuel and emissions. And so we have batteries that allow us to come into port, and actually other places, particularly where we want to be quiet around wildlife, which means that we'll have no emissions for the ship for a period of time. So that obviously we can take advantage of the latest technology to do it. And of course, the advances that are taking place, I'm pretty sure, although the first two sister ships are, let's call them, state of the art, but I bet by the time we get to the third ship, there will be even more advances that we've taken advantage of. And the aim is, I think, for us and every cruise line is, to leave the lightest footprint that we can possibly leave. We're committed to that. We're committed to being a sustainable organisation, and hopefully we've got the hardware and the practices and processes on board to live up to that claim.
Excellent, thank you. I mean, I do think it's something that's very important. I think it's something that was perhaps 20 years ago, it wasn't really the question at all, but that's just how much we've moved on, not just as an industry, although I think cruising has been, I think, quite conscientious, and probably actually out of all the different strands of travel, probably one of the most conscientious, but it's something that we're, very aware of now. And I guess with your, let's say new but not new sort of cruise line, you can take advantage of all those sort of new technologies and start with a clean slate. And
I think even more so now than at any other time, it's a privilege to be able to travel the world. It's always been a privilege to go and see amazing places and meet extraordinary people and experience their cultures and learn about that. And I think when we come out of the period that we're in at the moment, I think it's even more of a privilege, and I think people will grasp onto that. Well, it only remains a privilege if we all do our utmost to make sure that we preserve that, and we're committed to that as a business.
Exactly, that's very true. And moving on slightly now, we saw in your presentation that you have a gym and sauna on board. Firstly, are there spa facilities available too? Because I have a client in particular, Janet, who has a question about onboard spa and sauna facilities. That's always something that she likes to look for. As given the COVID restrictions, so we are now moving towards, the COVID questions now. She is keen to know if saunas and steam rooms are available on the ships, perhaps with restricted access. Have you?
Yeah. So the answer to the question. So I'll try to get all the answer. Let's do COVID at the end. How's that?
Yeah.
So yes, is there a sauna on the ship? Yes, and the sauna on the ship has these sort of floor-to-ceiling windows, so you're looking directly outside. So while you are kind of on fire, you can be looking at and particularly in the polar regions, maybe seeing icebergs going past. So, and then right outside of the sauna is two small hot tubs, so you can literally be at one with the nature. And there is a spa room, and now it's a spa room that caters to individuals and can be booked. And obviously, if we're talking about from a health and safety perspective and from a COVID, it would be cleaned after and sanitized after every every use rather. So if Janet's got a particular penchant for having a treatment of any sort, she can book that, go down and be very comfortable knowing that it will be a completely sanitized area.
Excellent, thank you. So Hazel's asked, she says the attraction of some cruise lines is striking up conversations and, very much like we've discussed with Swans, and often making new friends in restaurants, bars or excursions. She said this isn't going to be easy due to social distancing, and her inclination sadly is not to cruise unless or until social distancing restrictions are eased. Can you explain to Hazel how it would still be possible to enjoy a convivial onboard experience if or while social distancing is still in place?
So the first thing I would, it's a very good question. I think everyone is, how do things work as we move through this? One of the things I would say is our first sailing. So our first ship, which is the Minerva, will be in London on the 2nd of the 11th, 2021. So we're actually 363 days away from that. Our hope, and I'm sure it's the hope of everybody, is that by then the world will be a very different place and we'll be in a very different position. And we're hoping that there will be well, obviously we'd love to say that there will be a vaccine in play, but there will be testing before you get on board the ship. There'll be testing, before you even get on the plane, when you get off the plane, before you board our ship, there'll be testing, and on an ongoing basis, which will create a safe environment and mean that social distancing, as it is at the moment, isn't of concern. What I would say about the two first sister ships that we're having built is that, and this was not by design, is that we have built ships with the idea really based around sight lines and the ability to have and see where you are at all times from everywhere in the ship. And actually, I guess, sorry, excuse me, that's my phone. I guess if social distancing was to remain something that would be on board, our ships would be better placed for that, because we have so much space within the build that we would have to put measures in place. Hopefully, as I say, come next November, we're in a different place, and that social distancing and some of the measures that we're all having to live with now will not be as prevalent, because we'll be in a position where we can manage this in a different way. And I'm sure that people have queries about COVID and policies and stuff, so I might as well roll into that, if you don't mind. So again, we are a full 12 months away from having to deliver an onboard customer experience on the first Swan Hellenic ship, Minerva. So do we have policies in place? The answer to that question is no, because we are very much seeing what is going to be. So we're taking advice from, as you can imagine, Vicand, which I think is the #1 marine hygienist organisation in the world. We have a partnership with them. We have a long-standing understanding of working with them. I think all of the people in the senior leadership team have gone to them for our safety protocols on previous businesses. So that's in place. And in fact, I have a call with them a little bit later on. So I imagine that we are monitoring that very closely. Obviously, we take note of all government advice, and we will follow that to the letter of the law, as and when we need to. I think probably what people need to know is that, what does that mean if this is to continue from a booking perspective? Well, we have a very flexible booking policy. If someone books with Swan Hellenic and they need to cancel any time up to 45 days before travel, they can have a 3-year rebooking window on any cruise that they want. So we're trying to be as flexible, because I think that's what people want. Now, we're hoping in a year's time things will be back to normal and people will be cruising, and so they won't need to be flexible. If there is, it's in place already. Health and safety, irrespective of COVID, we will have a partnership with Vicand where we're offering the highest level of health and safety, irrespective on board, because that's what you do as a cruise operator. So we're fairly confident that in a year's time things will be better, and if they're not, we're extremely confident that we will provide a very safe environment that makes sure that the well-being of any guest on Swan Hellenic is taken into account and is looked after from the second they arrive to the second they go home.
Yeah, I mean, sanitation on ships has always been, immaculate, really. And you mentioned the air filtration system, which I think would be that would be very good from a COVID point of view, or point of view of spreading of any other sort of germs. So it seems like, in terms of sanitation and hygiene, they should be okay. And I guess it's a case of whatever social distancing measures may or may not be in place at that time. So, I mean, I guess because, like you say, we do have like another year before your first ship, and because, so I did have a couple of questions, but I think I can sort of guess that it'll be a case of seeing what measures are required to be in place, because, or even what relationships you have with sort of ground handlers at destinations, because I did have John, who was keen to know what extra precautions have been taken to protect from COVID-19, both on the ships at ports and on the excursions at destinations. But
well, maybe this is a good answer for John and anyone else. So, and I obviously I'm extraordinarily biased because I'm in the cruise industry, but the cruise industry, I think, was perhaps bore the brunt of a little bit at the start of all of this. And as a consequence of that, the regulatory bodies and the companies themselves have, I think, worked extraordinarily hard to try to put into place a series of measures so that people can cruise from now. And even yesterday, the CDC said that, you know, they've taken off the ban for cruising in the US. And there's a 40-page document that details all the protocols any cruise line has to go through prior to any one passenger stepping on board. So the flip side of that is that's what we're doing from the cruise line perspective. Yeah. What's also happened is that all the port agents, all of the DMCs, all the ShoreX companies, all of the providers to the ShoreX companies have all had to adhere to the processes and practicalities in place. And, you know, if we're going to be frank about it, if anyone isn't prepared to step up and meet the needs that are outlined in this document and through organisations such as CLIA, then you can't work with those organisations. It's a very simple fact. You know, I think there's been a few scenarios where companies have perhaps tried to do and gone back into the water a little bit before this document was produced, and have not had the thoroughness required, and so, you know, I've come so it's not worked out very well. The cruise industry itself has tried to put into place a very well documented, high level series of protocols and processes, and anyone who wants to sail under the current climate needs to follow it. It's very simple.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there have been some success stories in the cruising industry, which has shown it is possible to cruise safely. But yeah, I mean, we've still got a year, hopefully, as you say. Things should hopefully be very different now, from now. I'd like to think they are, and at least you've got that flexibility if we're not much further forward, but hopefully. I mean, I'm not sure how much longer.
We're not going to go down that route.
No,
we will be further forward.
We're going to be positive, and we'll be.
Yes, hopefully everyone who's interested will be down with us in London in November, and we're talking about 2020 as if it's some far off land where people did things differently, to quote the go-between.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for answering all of our questions, John. You know, I'm really excited to hear more about what Swan Hellenic will have to offer. But it's great to see the insight that we have seen, and I'm sure our clients will have also found this presentation and the Q&A as interesting and inspiring as I have. And so thank you for your time and your support in our virtual cruise festival. And yeah, I think
well, thank you, Amy. Firstly, delighted to have been invited. You know, so thanks to you for organising it, first of all. It's been great, and we really appreciate being a part of it. Anyone who's got any questions at all about Swan Hellenic, doesn't matter if it's the smallest question in the world to the most gargantuan question, you know, get in touch with you guys, let us know, we'll try to answer everything. And as we move through the development of the relaunch of Swan Hellenic, we'll keep you all fully informed, and hopefully we've got a proposition, a brand, itineraries and hardware, and you know, add all that together. We hope that we've got the experience of a lifetime for people, and anyone who's been, you know, a regular cruiser or went with Swan will hopefully Swan 2.0 also represents something they would be interested in doing, and you know, we'd love to have people on board.
Yeah, and it'd be great to also bring Swan Hellenic to a newer generation of, you know, people who still want to have that sort of cultural, you know, immersion. They want to see the world a bit, and I think actually there is even more of an appetite for that than something I think we've noticed in the last few years. People are more keen on experiences, on connecting with the world, and using travel to connect and have those sort of I guess those moments where you sort of realise how amazing the world can be, and how great it can be to connect with other people, whether it's like a like-minded passenger or a local person on a port of call or something. And I think travel is really a great connector, and I think that's something that we've all been missing out on so much this year. So it seems like Swan Hellenic really is will be coming at the right time, hopefully. So.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think for anyone, I'm fortunate enough to have spent my career in travel, and it's a thing that I didn't realise until this year how big a part of me it was, and how much I've missed it. And I'm sure everybody who all your guests and clients feel the same way. So we've had a year off. The world has had a year off. We have to dust ourselves down for 2021, and we have to get back out there and have amazing experiences, because my belief is the world is a better place through travel. We learn from travel, we enrich ourselves by travel, and then we bring it back and we enrich the people at home. And so to have lost a year of that, we need to double down in 21 and 22, and hopefully we can play a small part in that process. So yes, fingers crossed, next year will be a good year for everybody.
Yeah. So here's to 2021, the new Swan Hellenic. Okay, well, thanks for your time, and thanks to our viewers who have, I'm sure, enjoyed this presentation. So take care, everyone.
Bye.
Well, thank you for joining our presentation. I hope you enjoyed both John's presentation and the Q&A that we did. I hope you found it all informative and inspirational. I know I did. Certainly seeing what to expect with Minerva and Swan Hellenic. I think there's a lot to look forward to and a lot to anticipate, and I can't wait to hear further details. So, watch this space. We'll be happy to share with you the news as soon as we get it. But definitely a lot we've learnt today, a lot to look forward to. And if you do want to find out more about Swan Hellenic, or even book a cruise on board, then give us a call on 01234 326 758, or email sales@cruiseselect.co.uk, and Team Select will be more than happy to help. And we can't wait to hear from you. But in the meantime, I'm glad you enjoyed this presentation. Take care and keep safe. Thank you for your time, and goodbye.